There's so much at stake for Jayson Tatum in this series that no one can quite define what it is. You've got some people telling us he has to be the Finals MVP. You got some people saying he just needs to win. You have others saying he just needs to play well. To me, Jayson Tatum has been too great a player for too long for these questions to continue to persist. I have to believe he is going to, one way or another, put an end to some of them, because there's no way in my mind he doesn't play great in these finals. Zach, let me come to you. First impression on the NBA Finals.
I'm looking at the big men on both ends of the floor. A lot of the series is going to orbit those centers, and this is the time where Boston finally needs Kristaps Porzingis. They need his shooting to drag Dallas's bigs out of the paint, and they need his rim protection. If you're going to play drop-back defense on Luka, which you might not be able to do, but that's how Boston likes to play, it helps to have a giant shot blocker back there who's bigger than Al Horford.
I want to talk about this one a little bit more here, just how important Porzingis being healthy is to this series. In the meantime, Legs, give me your first impression.
I'm just thinking about Boston's defense and how they're going to be able to try to control Luka and Kyrie. You're not going to stop them. They're both going to put up numbers. They're both going to have huge moments in stretches of these games. And most importantly, in the last 5 minutes of these games, because I think they're going to be tight. What can Boston do to limit their efficiency? Even 10%, 15%, whatever you can do on a given night. What can you do to affect them in a way that gives you a better chance to win? Because to this point, no one's really had an answer for Luka. I know Lou Dort got a lot of credit in the OKC series. I think he's got a physical profile to do it, but Luka also wasn't fully healthy. He looks healthy now, and that's a completely different scenario for the Boston Celtics defense.
Absolutely. Look, we had Mark Cuban on the radio show back in September. We played a little bit of him earlier talking about Kyrie. We'll do that again a little bit later in this hour in case you missed it. But when it came to Luka, he had no question then or now that his season was going to be dominant.
He's just the most talented player of the NBA, and he hasn't begun to scratch the surface of what he can do. And I think he was humbled last year, and that didn't sit well with him or any of us. And he's come back a man on a mission. And just Luka and 4 guys named Mo can beat a lot of teams in the NBA, right? That's how good he is.
You know, it's really amazing when you think about it, and you'll see it when we play the Kyrie if you weren't with us a little bit earlier, but it all sounds easy now. Well, you hear Mark Cuban saying that now, and you say, oh, yeah, sure, of course. But we have to remember the context of where we were. This is a team that was fined for tanking games at the end of last season to make sure they didn't make the playoffs. That's where this franchise was. So to be where it was then and to be where it is now in a span of 1 year is extraordinary, and obviously Luka is the most important reason.
Well, flashback 1 extra year, 2 years ago, they were in the conference finals, 3 wins away from the finals, and that's how good this guy is. Mark Cuban saying he's one of the most dominant players in the NBA, is going to have a great season. I think the sky is blue and the clouds are going to come out today. I mean, like, That's Luka. That's what he is. And he is the ultimate insurance policy. If you look at that roster from 2 years ago that made the conference finals versus now, it's almost entirely different with one similarity that really matters, and that's Luka Doncic. When you have a player this good who can get any shot against any defense and has every single pass in the bag, including passes we've never seen before, those behind-the-head passes he has, you can get away with a lot of mistakes if you correct them well, and they did. The Kyrie trade is going to go down as an all-time heist, and the deals they made this year helped their team. And when you have that dude doing things like that, breaking defenses, breaking franchises, you can get this far.
Legs, there are people who are going to say Luka Doncic is the best player in the whole world. If they said that in your presence, what would you say back?
I'd say we got to let's see what happens here with this finals. I think you listen to anoint a player the best player in the league. Typically, you win a championship or be an MVP first. One of those two. Luka hasn't done either, and there's no question that he's the most dominant. I think the most dominant offensive player in the NBA. We know that. But I think you got to finish the deal because you've got a guy in Denver that's got 3 MVPs in the last 4 years and it was a champion just a year ago. So I think there are steps to this. Luka certainly is close to that. And I laughed listening to Mark Cuban for this reason. He said he hasn't scratched the surface. I'm going, wait a second. I think he's scratched the surface. Like, I hear a scratching going on. If that's not Luka Doncic scratching the surface, I've got a rat in my wall I need to take care of because something is scratching something. All right? So listen, this guy has ascended to a place now where we expect him to dominate any defense in front of him, and I think a lot of people are expecting the same thing in the NBA Finals. I had doubts as well going into this season because of the way their year ended. There's no question I was skeptical. What started to change my mind was the chemistry between he and Kyrie in the first half of the season. That was completely different. And then the additions that they made to improve their depth and their defensive versatility at the trading deadline. When you added all that up, you now have a team that's made a run to the NBA Finals.
Let's put the graphic up there. Once again, if he's not scratching the surface, then that is terrifying news for everybody because he has been number one in this postseason in every offensive category and steals as well, and rebounds. I mean, he's been overwhelmingly the best player. But scratching the surface suggests he can still get better. And look, he's 25 years old. So historically, the greatest players in history are at their best when they're 27, 28, 29. So maybe he can still get better.
I think he still can get better, and he's showing it on defense in this playoff run. This was the best three-point shooting season of his career. That step back is more accurate now than it ever was. And I think if there is a next step, he doesn't need a next step. He already has the answer for everything. I think they should post him up more, and as he gets older in his career, he should use that giant 6'7", 6'8" frame and all his strength to take guys to the block and start getting easier inside-out passes. So there are areas where you can get better. But look, there's no stopping guys like this. Like Leg said before, it's just, can you chip away at the margins a little bit without giving the wrong guys wide open threes? He just has the answer for every single scheme.
What's been really interesting to watch is the transformation from people questioning whether he was in perfect shape or all that kind of stuff by looking at his frame to where Tim Legler, you were on the show last week or so saying, comparing getting hit by him when he's trying to get himself open for a shot to being hit in the chest with a refrigerator. So, I mean, that's, you know, it really does go to show you when the shot falls, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference otherwise.
In this finals, they will have the two best players in the finals, Luka and Kyrie. And then the Boston Celtics, in my opinion, probably have the next five.
Okay. So there you have it. He's going to say that. And again, people are going to get mad. People are going to say, how in the world are you going to say that a series that features Jayson Tatum in it and Jaylen Brown, that the two best players in the series are both on the other team?
They just give anyone an NBA podcast now, right? Anyone can just get on an NBA podcast and say, look, Luka's number one, right? And Tatum over 82 games is number two. That's indisputable to me, and the All-NBA voting says it is also indisputable. Tatum's better than Kyrie. But Kyrie and Jaylen Brown are both so good, and Kyrie's been so spectacular, yeah, that in these 7 games, we may play that clip of RJ and say, hey, he was right. They were the two best players in the finals. And if he is right, Dallas is winning the NBA championship for the first time since 2011.
Let me take it back to something you said a minute ago, which was not what we planned here, but this just jumped into my head as far as who's going to play big along the way. So much has been made and will be made as the series goes on about Kyrie and his stint with Boston and all the things that didn't go right. Much less, I think, has been said about Kristaps Porzingis and his time in Dallas. But that was a much heralded move that they made, that people made a very big deal of, and obviously it didn't go well and it ended really badly. Earlier in just in this conversation here, Zach, you said you think Porzingis is critical. What words did you actually use to this series?
I think the centers are going to determine a lot of the sort of nuts and bolts of the X's and O's of it.
Here's the thing. I think we're pretty sure Porzingis is going to play legs. What we're not sure is how effective he's going to be and whether or not, you know, it's so typical, unfortunately, of the really big guys when they have lower body injuries. You know, do we see him in game 1 or game 2 all of a sudden pulling up with that again, and now all of a sudden he's not really a factor? So I guess I'll ask the question this way. Do you think the Celtics need him to be a difference maker in this series in order to win? Legs.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis has to make sure he made his presence felt in this series for them to win it. I do believe that. Zach's right. They need his length against these lob runners, Gafford and Lively. You just need that kind of size and length as a last line rim deterrent. It gives Luka and Kyrie a different look, particularly Luka, when he gets down the edges of the lane and he waits for that last second commit out of the center. If that's Al Horford back there, it looks a lot different to Luka Doncic than if it's Kristaps Porzingis. And I think even more importantly, it's his spacing, Greeny, because the Dallas Mavericks are one of the best in the league at closing out to the three-point line with their length and their speed. But Kristaps Porzingis isn't spotting up at 24 feet. He's spotting up at 28 feet. That's a big difference when you talk about that extra step that you need to get there to contest a shot. When you're 7'3" and you're shooting that deeply, very difficult to make that an honest contest. That's the difference he makes with their spacing and the threat that he represents offensively. It's just a completely different challenge for Dallas to be able to contain the penetration of Tatum and Brown and then be able to rotate back to Kristaps Porzingis when he's at those distances.
So if I were to put the question as directly as this, do the Celtics absolutely need Porzingis to win this championship? Your answer would be?
Yes, the East cakewalk is over. This is a real contending championship level team in the Dallas Mavericks. All hands on deck.
We'll see.
NBA